Coach Rick here. I thought I'd go through one of my training sessions with you and show you how I analyse the actual data from it and make sure that it's correct. It's the same sort of way that I look at the athletes that I work with. So first of all, this is a training calendar in Final Surge that I use with a lot of my riders. And the first thing that we're doing is I'm looking at this session here, which is the one that I did yesterday, Sunday. And it was a fairly lengthy indoor turbo trainer session. It was just under 2 hours and 45 minutes. And we can see here that I covered just under 50 kilometers. Of course, that's sort of totally meaningless because it's obviously indoors. It's just under 18 kilometers an hour with an awful lot of altitude gain at 1437 meters. So as you might be able to guess, and as you'll be able to see in a second, this was basically done over on Alpe de Zwift. So first of all, I can click here and have a look at things. This is the map of where I rode. This is Alpe de Zwift. This is another part of the Zwift world that I rode on in between. And if we look down here, this is the power file from yesterday's ride, and if I just move this across a little bit so you can see a bit more, Final Surge very nicely works out how long I spend in each particular training zone. These are my cycle coach training zones, and as we can see, I've done 80% here in my endurance zones, 13% in what most people call sweet spot, I call MIET, and then 7% here in some sort of fairly harder, essentially above threshold sort of efforts. And what I was looking for yesterday was a rough 80-20 split, and I'm actually quite surprised that it worked out that way. Basically alternating between endurance work and then some harder work. And that's pretty much how I look at things on Final Surge. I see how Final Surge works things out and calculates time in zones for me. That's very nice. And then for the bulk of my analysis, I do that over on WKO5. WKO5 is the desktop Big Brother version of Training Peaks. And this has some quite in-depth analysis. You'll see that the main thing that I'm going to be looking at is the power file here, and you'll see this over in WKO5 now. So I'll just flick there, and this is the session that I did yesterday. So first of all, there's a variety of lines here. There's blue, green, yellow, red. Red is heart rate, and for some reason I put a new battery in yesterday in my heart rate strap, and it died, and I haven't worked out why it died. Maybe it needs a new battery or something needs looking at, but that was the end of heart rate yesterday. Yellow is power, and you can see that I did a variety of different powers. Green is your cadence, blue is speed, and this grey line, or this grey shaded area, this is the altitude gain that you've gained. So essentially yesterday's ride was, what was this? This was 20 minutes or so riding out and doing the first part of Alpe d'Huez, and I did this over at well, to be fair, I was looking at round about 160 watts, which is sort of the cusp of zone 1 and zone 2 for me. It was sort of the top end of zone 1, low end of zone 2, and it was basically a 20-minute warm-up. From there, I then wanted to do 20 minutes, so alternating a 20-minute block, first of all of endurance, then doing 20 minutes here at round about 230 watts. It turns out it was actually 220 watts that I managed to actually average for 20 minutes. That's sort of my low end MIET, which is moderately intensive endurance training, otherwise known as sweet spot. And although I was doing a fair amount of work at 230 watts, every time you went round a hairpin, I'd sort of ease off and power would fall away, have a little bit of recovery, and that kept the power a little bit lower. Once I did that, I then did a further 20 minutes at the endurance pace, and you can see here that power was dropping away a lot. And essentially what happened was I started to lose the connection between my Tax Neo indoor trainer and my computer, and it was having some real issues here. There was quite a lot of dropouts, and I got to here, and you can see that there's this blank space here of a few minutes. And what had happened here was I'd had enough of the dropouts, and I decided to swap from my desktop computer to my laptop, so I had to reboot that up, then load Zwift up, and then I did 30 minutes nice easy recovery over here. This was round about 100 watts or so. Wasn't very difficult at all. I just wanted a nice 30 minutes recovery. This was over on Tempest Fugit on Zwift, which is a very flat route. And that was nice and easy to do. And then again, there was a little bit of a blank space there as I exited that world and then reloaded the Zwift world. The Alp de Zwift route. Here there was about 15 minutes of endurance-y type work. With a few little efforts in, and what I wanted to do once I got onto Outdoers was I wanted to do a little 12-minute block of hard efforts, and so this was 2 minutes just above FTP, it's about 104, 105% of FTP, 1 minute at the sort of MIET range, maybe the low end of MIET. It was about 85% of FTP, and I kept repeating that 4 times. I just wanted to do some harder efforts. Once I'd done that, I had about 5 minutes of riding quite easy. I was fairly tired at this point and starting to get somewhat bored on the indoor trainer and wishing I was outside, although it was freezing cold. And so, yeah, it was just 5 minutes, very easy. I had something to eat here. I think I'd also had a gel roundabout here as well, just to make sure that I could get through this part and not fall to pieces. So I did that there, continued riding up out to Zwift, and then what I wanted to do here was another 30-minute block at this sort of endurance pace, which was about 150, 160 watts. I think I was aiming to actually try and keep 180. And if I look here, this point here was 190 watts. I think what I was aiming for was between these two efforts. So I wanted to be above this endurance pace, but below the sweet spot sort of effort. So it works out at about 190 watts. And I wanted to actually keep that going for 30 minutes while I rode up Alp d'Huez or Alp de Zwift. And as you can see here, I did about 15 minutes here. And then there was a couple of minutes here where the power started to tail off. And to be honest, I started to think my legs were starting to drop off and they were starting to hurt quite badly. And I thought, I don't actually want to continue at this pace. So I continued on and made sure I did the 30 minutes that I'd been aiming for. So I continued riding up out to Zwift, but I just dropped the power right off here. And this was very, very easy at this point. Yeah, basically, well into recovery. I was doing about 80, 90 watts. And then once I got to the 30-minute point, I turned around and just descended even easier down out to Zwift until I stopped freewheeling as you basically come to the flat bit at the end of it. And that's where I finished the ride. So I was very happy with the ride. Overall, it had been quite a success. A little bit disappointed I had not been able to do that last final 30 minutes, but I felt that that my legs were going to explode if I had, so I just had to ease up. I felt that was quite important. What's nice in WKO5 is that it gives you a training impact score. And so you can see here, that it scored me 5 out of 10 for an aerobic effort for the entire ride. So that's 5 and 7 for the anaerobic. So even here, when I was doing the sweet spot work, because I'm not riding in erg mode, it's all free riding. You can't help but go a little bit harder at times, and so you're above FTP. All these red dots here, that's above FTP. And obviously here, where I was doing these 2-minute efforts, that was definitely above FTP because I was aiming for 105%. And there were points where I was actually getting up to, obviously up into the 300s, way above FTP. My FTP is about 260 watts. And so, these bits were quite hard. It certainly felt quite difficult. This bit here wasn't too difficult at all. And then here you can see how WKO5 measures your what they call your functional reserve capacity. And this is similar to, not quite the same, but similar to W prime that you might see in Golden Cheetah, or if you look in the exercise physiology research, it's called W prime W balance. And this gives you an idea here of how these efforts were depleting my anaerobic reserves before being restored here as I rode easier. And you can see here that that WKO5 is estimating 240 watts for my FTP, and that's simply because I haven't actually done a full-on FTP type test for a while, so my data's dropped off. But judging how I feel, I'd say my FTP is around about 260, and it's sort of underestimating it, but it's just because I haven't done a hard ride for a while. But I will be doing one soon. Yes, so here, also in WKO5, it calculates time in zones, and you can see them here. The way it works out zones is slightly different in WKO5 compared to Final Surge, but it's saying that I did 16.5% above FTP in WKO5, and the rest of it was obviously 80% in my endurance zones. But yeah, happy with that. Sort of obviously quite similar, not quite the same as Final Surge, but not far away. And it's just because I use slightly different zones in Final Surge, or rather, that works out the way I work them out in Final Surge, and in WKO5 they're worked out slightly differently. Not a massive difference, it's obviously only 3.5%, but yeah, that's my ride yesterday, and that's how I do the analysis on various rides, having a look, seeing what the average power is, and I think the only other thing that I probably look at is the total TSS for that ride, which is obviously going to be slightly wrong on WKO5 because my FTP is set slightly wrongly, but there 163 from that is how it's suggesting it. And the other thing that I do, and I don't know whether it shows up in WKO5, is I tend to work out the actual total energy demand of the ride, and I do that just simply by multiplying the average power, which was 143 watts for the entire ride, multiplied by the actual duration, which was 2 hours 39 minutes and 30 odd seconds. So I've just called that 2 hours 40. Multiplied that out by 143 watts and come up with the actual energy that I produced for that ride. So that's how I look at my training sessions and my athletes' training sessions, and I thought I'd give you some insight into that. If you've got any questions, do give me a shout, and thanks for watching.